Do you know who said this? A true leader is not someone who seeks power, but someone who seeks to empower others. Would you want to take a guess? If you guessed Mark Twain, you would be correct. Now, here's another quote that I want to see if you could figure out who said this. This one you might be able to get. It may be easier than the first. So here it is. The greatest among you will be your servant. The greatest among you will be your servant. Now, if you said Jesus, you would be correct, because he said that in Matthew 23, verse 11. Now, if you were able to guess those two quotes I just shared, what you might have realized that these quotes had something, even though the word was not mentioned per se, had a very common denominator to them, right? It had a certain feel as to who these quotes were meant for. And as you can probably see, well, the first one, I think, was more so the empowering aspect. You may think about, a leader, because it did say a true leader. So that one by Mark Twain did have the word leader, but the one from Jesus never had that word. It didn't have the word, but it's implied who he was speaking to, and that is leadership, leaders, right? He was talking about leadership. So if you guess that leadership was the topic, then you are 3 for 3. Man, you are on a roll, and it means something. You may want to keep on doing whatever you're doing, because here you are 3 for 3. Now, if you also notice that these two quotes, they came from two people that would be considered spiritual individuals, even though Mark Twain was more of a skeptic to the things of God. I mean, Jesus, of course not. He was God himself, and he encapsulated everything that you read about in the Bible. So he was purely God. Mark Twain was very skeptic. And here it is. He's almost using two people. One was skeptical. The other one was all in on the things of God. So today in this episode, which is episode number 80, we're going to explore how faith-based strategies, right, biblical strategies, can revolutionize your leadership approach in both your marriage and in your business. Now, I emphasize marriage because that's where we're going to camp out mostly in this episode. And if you've been following and listening, you may have seen and heard this shift that has taken place in what I'm sharing. I'm targeting mostly that high-achieving Christian business professional, right? Husband, namely a husband, because I believe that this. Well, let me not get ahead of myself. You may have heard me mention that before, so let me just kind of park that even right now. But here's what I do know: as a high-achieving Christian business professional husband, you hold a unique position, right? Balancing what I call the demands of pursuing or excelling. Let's put excelling in your business goals with the responsibilities of still maintaining and trying to have a very satisfying and exceptional marriage. Am I right? I think you would say yes. Now, at times you would agree that it can be quite challenging. And I do know myself firsthand how this can be a challenge when you feel like you want to spend time in your business working on it, working in it and working on it. And sometimes because of the responsibilities and obligations we do have as husbands, we at times are conflicted. I've been married for 38 years now, as of this recording, 38 years. And man, it feels like yesterday. It's great. It's been great years. Have we had our ups and downs? Of course we have had our ups and downs. We've had our trials. We've had our challenges. And some of those came as a result of me pursuing my business. As you can imagine, because you may also have experienced that, because there's this intrinsic pressure and stress and guilt that comes at you, even though your wife may not be necessarily, somehow insinuating or directly stating some things. but you feel this pressure. You feel that you need to be home more with your family, your wife and your children. And man, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge. So what I'm going to do is to show you a way forward that involves leadership. And I think if you understand how important, which I think you do, leadership is in this role, then this episode is going to truly help you quite a bit. I'm going to help you redefine your leadership skills by incorporating biblical principles or faith-based principles. Why? I believe it's the best way to empower you and empower myself to excel in our work, life, and in our homes. Well, hello, and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, the show that challenges you as a high-achieving Christian business professional husband to bulletproof your marriage while developing highly effective communication and leadership skills so that you can confidently pursue your business and professional goals without compromising your faith, family, or well-being. I'm your host, Kingsley Grant, and I invite you to join me each week as we endeavor to make this your reality.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
Now, whenever I talk about the topic of leadership, there are many questions that surfaces, especially when it comes to the home domain. This is where sometimes pushback does come because of the way that I frame leadership in the home. And if you listened to the past episode number 79, you would have heard me talk about leadership in the home. Actually, episode number 79, you may have heard me mention this idea of leadership in the home. And I hope you have listened to that. If you missed it, you can access it at happiermarriagesecrets.com/podcast, happiermarriagesecrets.com/podcast. Make sure you listen to that. Now, I love this quote by Dave Ramsey. He says this: true leadership is not about dominance. And I also emphasized that in my last episode. True leadership is not about dominance. It's about serving others and creating a supportive environment for growth. Jesus had a lot to say about those who would seek to be leaders, right? He gave some warnings and also guidelines of what leadership should look like. And one of those happened to be a lesson that he taught his disciples. He said to them in Matthew 20, verse 25 to 27, he says, he called them to him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you." You get it? Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. That Jesus had a paradoxical viewpoint on leadership, right? It is really how he, very counter to how we see many people who are leaders today are trying to be this power-hungry, driving force at whatever cost. Not so of how Jesus taught leadership. And that's why I say embracing biblical principles is the best way to become the leader that God intends for you to lead and to have people to follow behind you. I love this, I wouldn't say love, but there's a statistic by the Barner Group that reveal that 85% of Christian business leaders, 85% of them, believe that their faith plays a significant role in their leadership style. 85%. And there's a reason for that, because it does. It makes a difference. It is, as I mentioned, it's an opposing kind of viewpoint to what we see leadership in our world today is all about. This is about servant leadership. And so my first point is this: servant leadership in the home. I want to talk about that. Now, in the context of your marriage, servant leadership is about prioritizing the needs of your wife, okay, and your children. It's as for you as a husband, it's about you creating a home environment that is nurturing, supportive, and full of love. That is your responsibility. I know it's hard because you are thinking, well, my wife is the one who primarily give direction to the home. And in most cases that happens. But she's looking to you for the overall leadership. She's looking to you for her to kind of get some cue as to what that should look like for the overall home structure. And she'll gladly execute on those things. But she's looking to you many times for leadership. I was speaking to someone very, very, I would say, an aspirational entrepreneur. I mean, she's really, really good at what she does. And she said to me, and her husband is not necessarily that kind of driving force. And she said, I wish my husband would step up at many times and kind of give leadership to the home, because I would love to be able to kind of fall in line to my husband. I love my husband and I want him to be the leader. I want him to, to give him my full support. And she's doing great things. And here is this, I would say, successful entrepreneur wife who is making these statements about her husband. I love what Dr. Henry Cloud said. He said, a true leader serves. It's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of the people in your charge. Let me say that again. A true leader serves. It's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of the people in your charge. And that is what leadership does. So let me give some key points that would characterize this kind of leadership I'm talking about. This leadership embraces humility, right? It recognizes that true leaders or true leadership stems from humility and the willingness to serve others. Jesus demonstrated this very well. He was the leader of all leaders. And what did he say? I did not come to serve, but to be served, right? I did not come to be served. I came to serve. And he demonstrated that by washing the disciples' feet. I mean, imagine that. So embracing humility is the key aspect of leadership, right? Second one, practice active listening. If you're going to be the kind of leader that God expects you or wants you to be in your home, you've got to be a listener, right? A listener. Engage in attentive listening. And again, in episode 79, I talk more about this active listening idea, right? So you engage in attentive listening to understand your wife's thoughts, her feelings, and her concerns. Don't dismiss that. Number 3, demonstrate empathy. As a leader that I'm talking about here, demonstrating empathy. So you're going to cultivate, work on, develop empathy. It's a skill that can be taught, can be learned. You cultivate that by acknowledging and understanding your wife's perspective. Understanding your wife's perspective. That's what empathy does. It asks you to put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? Now, and also number 4, express appreciation. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard from wives in my work, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, doing this for almost 2 decades and a certified relationship coach. I've heard this so often from wives, especially husbands too, but most of the wives, that she would say, I feel very unappreciated. I feel very unappreciated. I feel taken for granted by my husband. And sometimes his response is, I'm so busy. My head is in other places. My mind is so occupied. That's no excuse, my friend. Because again, you're going to model these things to your wife and to your children. So express appreciation regularly, right? Express gratitude for your wife's contributions and her sacrifices, because she's also doing the very same thing. C.S. Lewis said it this way: humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. Okay, let me say that again. C.S. Lewis says this: humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. I love the scriptural reference where Jesus also said this: whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but whoever humbles himself will be exalted. That's how God works. Now, the second thing I want to share with you about this idea of leadership is, how do you integrate faith into your leadership, right? Now, incorporating faith into your leadership, it truly can transform your approach to your marriage, as you may have heard me mention, or actually if you've seen me making the point so far. It will transform your marriage and your business when you put faith or biblical principles in your marriage. And here's some points that I want to mention under this category of incorporating faith into your leadership. Number one, when you are doing that, you're going to almost always, well, I wouldn't say almost, you're going to always seek God's guidance. Prayerfully seek God's wisdom and direction in your leadership decisions. Pray over the decisions you're making. I mean, I heard this phrase, which I think is such a good phrase. It says, water your decisions with prayer, right? Make it a time between you and God. Seek God's face about decisions, because some of these decisions, my friend, can impact a generation, can impact your children forever. So you want to make sure you seek God's guidance first, right? Also, secondly, align your decisions with biblical principles. You want to make sure that when you make a decision, that you are incorporating the principles of love, right? Is it loving? Is it something that is of service? Is it something of integrity? Is your decisions marked by those things? That's the biblical approach. So, and imagine the world. We're living in a world today that is hungry. It's hungry for biblical principles. For people to base in their leadership and their decisions this way. I was speaking to someone recently who is at odds with their leadership, and their person was saying, what should I do? I feel like I want to bring it up, but I'm not the confrontational type person. So that person sees and recognizes that leadership that they're under, it would not fit this way. Imagine if that leadership had biblical principles incorporated and showing one of love and service and integrity. They would have not the issue they're having today. This kind of leadership I'm suggesting, number 3, is empower others, right? It seeks to encourage and empower others to reach their full potential. And how do they do that? How do they do that? How would you do that? Even in your home, right? It's through mentorship and support. So you go act as a mentor, as a coach to your family and to your team, if you do have a team. And then lastly, under this idea of integrating faith into leadership, is to create a culture of respect. When I counsel with families many times and do parenting classes and parenting counseling, I would say to these families, especially the parents, your job is to create the culture of respect, meaning that you're going to respect your children as they respect you. You're going to respect your wife as she respects you. You want to make sure that everyone knows we're going to be respectful of each other. And how I say it is this way: respect others. People, place, and things. People, place, and things. Respect those, right? And so you're going to value the fact that, your children may have different perspectives of certain things, and your wife may have different perspectives of certain things, and they should, because they're their own individual. And you're going to treat them, right, with dignity. However, at the same time, you want to then say, whatever we do and whatever our perspectives might be, we want to make sure we value respect. We want to have a culture of respect in our home and in the workplace. Now, you're going to do all this by leading by example, right? As you may have heard, don't ask others to do what you are not willing to do yourself. Or you may have heard that a lesson is easier caught than taught, right? People learn more by what they see than what they hear, especially children. They're watching. Your colleagues, they're watching. Your customers, your clients are watching. They're listening keenly, not so much as what you're saying, but to what you're doing. I love a quote also by Dave Ramsey. He says this: the best way to lead is by example. Show your spouse how to love, how to serve, and how to put others first. Why? You're modeling that. You're doing the very same thing. So people may hear that phrase, show your spouse how to love, how to serve, and how to put others first. And they may have an attitude and say, wait a minute, Are you saying my wife doesn't know how to do that because she's a woman? And here we go now, right? This woman thing. No, of course not. Listen, it's simply saying, model that. You do it first as a leader. You show your spouse by loving her, serving her, and putting her first. That's how you show and model leadership. So you lead by love. And what better place to look at what that would look like than in 1 Corinthians 13, where the Bible says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking. Keep on going. I'm to keep on going. Here we go. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4-7. That is the kind of love you want to demonstrate in your home as a leader. And the third point is, how do you extend faith-based leadership into your business? Now, this is where sometimes it gets kind of tricky, depending on what environment you find yourself in. I remember when I was going to get to my graduate degree, one of the things that my professors would many times say, and I understand why they would say this, but they would always simply say, keep your work as a clinician away from spirituality, or keep faith, a religion out of what you're doing. And I remember after I graduated and was in my practice, I had gone to a conference where this other person that I really look up to, he really had made an impact in the work he does in the field of psychology and so on. And he was the one who debunked that. And he said, as he kind of walked us back through the historical idea of psychology and the work as a clinician. And he would talk about how many people who come in for work, for help as a client, they have a faith component. They many times have an anchor in their faith. And the question he asked was, so should we just ignore that? Of course not. So it depends on the environment you're in. And I mentioned that in one of my recent podcasts, how for a long time in my earliest stages of my business, having heard that so much, I was holding that back. I remember one day praying and asking God to forgive me for, holding back. And I believe that I wasn't ashamed of my faith, but I was holding back because I didn't want to impose, which I still don't impose on people. But I was holding back because I didn't want to violate that which I was taught in the early age stages of my business. Then I realized, wait a minute. This is part of who I am. And many of my clients are also have that spiritual spiritual component. Now, many times if they don't mention it, of course, I don't bring that up. But the moment they bring it up, hey, it's all fair game, right? Fair play. And I step into that moment. So, I believe that faith-based leadership can be applied to your business, and just ask God. God will give you the wisdom to know how to do that. Here's some key points I believe when you do that is lead with purpose. Make sure you have a clear purpose for your business that aligns with your faith and your values. And, if you have been following me for some time, you may see recently, I'm speaking more about my faith and incorporating my values and my core values into my podcast and my YouTube channel and in my teaching. Why? Because it's part of who I am. So lead with purpose. Value your people. Value people that you work with or you work for or who works for you, right? Treat them with respect and dignity, right? And then you value their contributions. I have two wonderful people that work for me as my virtual assistants. I mentioned them recently. Yan, who does my video editing, and Jennifer, who does my podcast editing. And I want to make sure that I value them with respect and dignity, not because they work for me. I want to treat them with the highest respect and the highest dignity as God would have me. Because why? They're created in God's image, and it's my duty as a leader to do that, right? The third point I want to make under this idea in heading is embrace ethical practices, right? You want to conduct your business with integrity and transparency, upholding ethical standards. This is very important. And it's a tough one, but it's a very important one in the world we're living in today, where people are cutthroat and, all of those things, but yet we want to do the right thing. And the last point I want to make under this category is how to contribute to the community. You want to be giving back, right? You want to engage in social responsibility. You want to be a part of the community. You want to be known for a giver, not a taker, but a giver. Because many times as leaders and business owners, we are the ones people are coming to. So we want to be able to find a way to give back because they bring to us and they transact with finances. We want to find a way to give back. And I love what the Bible teaches about, how we tithe our money, because 90% God allows us to keep. And he says 10% we bring back to God. But we should also, above and beyond that, give to our community, give to charitable organizations and so on. I love what the scripture said in Colossians 3. It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you'll receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ that you are serving, Colossians 3. So make sure that whatever you're doing, remember this part, you're doing it as unto the Lord, and God will hold us in account one day. We have to give account for how we serve in this regards, okay? So this is a good reminder to keep in mind when we think of being the kind of leader that is required, right, to take our business and our family to the next level, right? It's this idea of reminding ourselves that we're working for the Lord. So, and in so doing, we must make every effort to incorporate our biblical strategies, our faith-based strategies into our leadership approach, right? If we're ever going to transform our relationships, whether it's our family relationships or any other relationships, our business and our overall life. This is a prerequisite, I believe. So here's the key. By embracing servant leadership, aligning with biblical principles, and extending your faith into your professional endeavors, your professional goals, you can become a transformative leader. And here's what's going to happen when you do become that kind of leader. You're going to inspire those around you. And in so doing, you're going to leave, like I want to myself, leave a lasting legacy of love, service, and integrity. Remember, true leadership is not about seeking power or recognition. We talked about that today, as you listened to the episode earlier. It's about empowering others and making a positive impact on the world, right? It's about you embracing faith-based leadership or biblically based leadership. You can become a beacon or a light of hope and inspiration. And here's the key. You're going to demonstrate as that high-achieving Christian professional husband. You're going to demonstrate the power of God's love that transforms lives, transforms families, transforms businesses, right? Now, if you have any questions or comments, make sure you hit me up on Instagram. You can send me a DM at Kingsley Grant. And if you would like to get an instant feedback on your marriage, let me recommend that you take the free 90-second marriage assessment quiz at happiermarriagesecrets.com, happiermarriagesecrets.com/quiz. The link will be in the show notes, and it's a quick way for you to get some feedback on your marriage, but also get an instant result that can help you to assess where your marriage is at this point. So until next time, keep bulletproofing your marriage while you are developing highly effective communication and leadership skills, right? So that you can confidently pursue your business and professional goals without compromising your faith, your family, or your well-being. Okay, my friend, here is the announcer now as we wrap up today's episode.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleyggrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.